Well, hello, everyone, and welcome in. Oh, Green-Eyed Crow, welcome in. Thank you, thank you. Hello, welcome to everybody who's joining us live, and welcome to my YouTube channel, Buddhist Biohacker. I am your host and mystic guide, Lisa Gunshore, and we are here with you're like my best friend, really, like Julie Hoyle. Welcome back.
Thank you. You know how I go. I really love joining you on this channel. Thank you, Lisa.
Oh, I'm so happy to have you. And Raquel, we love you so much. Hello. So everybody join in. Our topic today, still here, living after the death of the psychological self. I am so excited because it has been a while since all of these organic conversations have been bubbling up, and here they come, and I love it. And I think we're in for an amazing season of Buddhist Biohacker. And want to share, before we get into our topic, I want to share that today is June 1st, 2025, and we are open for registration for our 5th OHO conference, One Heart, One Earth Global Healing Summit. It's been a while since I've said that out loud, and that makes me so excited. And our topic this year is Awakening the Sacred Body, and our OHO conference is July 10th through the 13th. Here's what's awesome about it. We have 20 plus speakers. It's completely free to register. So I'm going to give you all the information here in a minute. And it's all going to be here on YouTube, just like we have always done. It's such a beautiful way to express everything. And I've had some really cool personal initiatory experiences through these OHO conferences. And this really came from the incredible teacher, Anandamayi Ma. I've been reading her works and connecting with her energy. And I feel like she just poof, made this all happen. And here we are. And so I'm going to play our little trailer so you can get a sense of what this is all about. And then we'll talk a little bit more about it. Here we go.
Here and now, we call on you, Lord, come and meet us today. Here and now, have your way. Open up the heavens, come rain down your presence. We know there's more, there is so much more. Open up the heavens, come rain down your presence. We know there's more, there is so much more. So pour your spirit out, pour your spirit out.
Love it. So
Wow.
here it is, BuddhistBiohacker.com/OHO, One Heart, One Earth Global Healing Summit. Julie, obviously, is one of our featured speakers. And Julie, do you want to share a little bit about what you're thinking of talking about?
Yeah, what's been really coming up is the importance of reclaiming lost energy. So that's what I'm going to be focused on, because it's so easy to go through life, feeling depressed, feeling dispirited. You don't have the energy to do something, even though, a part of you feels inspired and led to get started. And then not realize that you've disconnected from aspects of your being, from your energy, from your core truth, through trying to fit in, or because of conditioning from your family, or fear of being seen, and all of those things. So I'm really excited to share some real important ways that you can, first of all, discover the parts that you've disconnected from, and then bring those parts back home so that you can live a more aligned, authentic life.
I love that so much. I'm so excited for you to speak. And I'm going to be speaking really as the host of the event, but I am planning a talk about awakening the sacred body and what that's really all about. And I'm going to share really my one of my first experiences that I share in my book, Enlightenment Pie, that's about just touching my body and connecting with myself. And honestly, I've been through that again this year, like just again of like, I think it's easy for us to go through our life and we kind of forget to be present with our physical body and what's really going on and look at what it has to say. We wait until it shouts at us through pain or inflammation. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about that. So I'm really excited. We have so many great speakers, y'all. And I just hope that everybody gets online and registers and is a part of our journey. It's going to be really great. And it'll be all here on Buddhist Biohacker. So don't forget to subscribe and like here. And we'll be scheduling out all of the talks here on YouTube over the next couple of weeks. So you can set your notifications on here too, so that you can get reminders of all the talks as well. So there's all that.
Yay!
Yay! All right. So here we go. We are going to talk about living after the death of the psychological self. And this really sprang from a conversation that Julie and I had offline, really about just the struggle of feeling tethered here and navigating our journeys here after we have an awakening. And I think part of it is, you know, I get in a place where I start to feel like, what's the point of all this? Like,
Yes.
What is the point? And I think the last couple of weeks, I've had some really beautiful and intense mediumship sessions. And it's really hard to explain what it's like to be a medium. But I think what's difficult about it, or what it brings up for me, is it's very existential, because you're sharing these messages from people who have passed away, who have regrets. They have a lot of regrets. They have things that they miss. They have things they wish they would have done. And, you know, what do you, like, it just makes me think about, like, what am I doing here? What is the point of it? How much time? We really don't know how much time we have. Like, we just don't. And nobody plans to die. I think that's the biggest thing I've noticed with the mediumship work, is every single soul on the other side is like, you know, I wasn't ready, or, you know, even if they were ready or they knew, like, they didn't have time to do the things they wanted to do. So it's like, you can't plan for it. So, like, what to do when you're here now?
Yes.
So.
Yes. You know, let me start first of all by speaking to the death of the psychological self and what that means. You know, a lot has been written and spoken about the death of the ego. And I think there can be a lot of misunderstanding about what that means. A lot of spiritual seekers think that after, you know, the death of the ego, they're going to live the most amazing, expansive, beautiful life and never have to suffer or anything. But essentially, the death of the ego is really a transition from identification with the mind and one's conditioning and thoughts, the belief that thoughts have validity, into the realization and the recognition that who you are is prior to the thoughts, to the beliefs and the conditioning. And sometimes it can be really radical. You can have a real radical shift and an awakening away from that identification. At other times it might be more subtle. And there isn't one kind of size fits all. I mean, I've shared about my own experiences with what that looks like, but nowadays I'm more kind of reluctant to share, because then I think people can think I have to have that experience before this happens. And of course, that isn't true. You know, these shifts away from identifying with the mind and one's conditioning are different for everybody, for all of us. And it might be gradual. It might be really, really an intense moment. And then it takes, you know, a while to sort of assimilate everything. So that's what we're speaking to with respect to the death of the psychological self. It's realizing that the conditioning, the beliefs, that your mind, your thoughts are not who you are. And then living from that place. But of course, all of that still means that sometimes, you know, conditioning and old patterns kind of have to play out. they're played out in a sort of a softer way. They don't have the same impact as they would have done before. And we're still expressing as an individual. That's another belief. Oftentimes people think, well, if I don't have the ego, I won't be able to function in the world. And of course, that's not true. Of course, you can function, but you're functioning in a different way. You're functioning from the aspect of the whole, from unified consciousness, from the recognition that we're all one, rather than from this idea that you are in charge and you know what's going on and you can change things and you take charge and all of that. So it's really just living from this place of recognizing that you're one with all of life, and you're still expressing as an individual self, so to speak, with a character, with moods, with feelings. You're still dealing with issues. You're still sometimes, maybe getting triggered as well, but obviously not as dramatically as you would have done beforehand. So just wanted to kind of lay that out to make it clear, because there can be a lot of confusion. And I would love to invite, whoever's listening to share their own experience of what that looked like, the death of the ego or the transition of the ego. That might be a fun place to start looking at this. But it is really about, experiencing life from this state of expansive awareness that is unconditioned by, family beliefs and, what the world is telling you. You're no longer looking to the world or to outside forces or forms to validate who you are.
Yeah, I think the question I ask myself all the time is, who am I now that I know who I'm not?
Yes.
And there's actually an Alanis Morissette song where she talks about that on my favorite album is when she went to India, because her lyrics are so easy to relate to if you're going through an awakening, because of her own experiences. But yeah, it's like, once you see the patterns, and I think, I'd like to talk a little bit about what comes up emotionally when that happens, because it's part of the shadow work. It's part of the awakening. And it's the hardest part, is navigating the shame, the depression, the grief. There's all these destructive emotions that come up, I think, going through it. For me, when I saw my patterns, I remember being on Maui and coming to understand codependency and looking at what, and I'm going to use the word wrong, what I did wrong, but it wasn't really wrong, right? It's just the conditioning.
Yes. Yeah.
But, going through that period of whoa, I was using triangulation. I was, using sex for power. I was doing this and that. You look at these things, and even just looking at how to take care of myself, I didn't know how to properly care for my body, right? I didn't know how to eat right. I wasn't taking care of myself the way that my body needed it to. And I went through, I don't know if it was really depression as much as it was just this grief of oh my gosh, there's this shift in your consciousness. And when you start to see all those patterns, and the beautiful thing is you can come out of the pattern, but there's that hard part that we navigate, getting through the grief of it all and coming into a place of forgiveness and acceptance. Those are the hardest parts. Trust, forgiveness, acceptance, hardest parts.
Yes, I agree with you. I mean, I think that's true for everybody. What happens is, when there's a shift of consciousness and there's a move away from identifying with the story and with the small I, let's put it that way, there can be grief, because you can see clearly the ways that you've diminished yourself in favor of trying to fit in or trying to fit the model of what was handed down to you via your family lineage. And that can be really painful. I mean, I remember some years ago, excuse me, having a lucid dream with a great being. And she said to me, you deny yourself, and she was speaking about capital self with a capital S. You deny yourself, and you deny yourself, and for what? And that just hit me so hard. And what I realized was I was denying my truth to fit into the family dynamic because I was afraid that, if I revealed what I knew, if I revealed who I was, and I don't mean in a grand way, giving lectures or whatever, but kind of was more true to my authentic beingness, then I would receive criticism and sarcasm and put downs. And I just didn't want that. So I felt like I was protecting my higher self, my truth. And really the reverse was true. I was just afraid to reveal, the authenticity of who I knew I was. And so that can take time. It can take time to transition away from those old ways of being and to live true to what you know now in this moment, which of course is very different to how you may have been when you were living at home as a teenager.
Yeah, absolutely. Raquel has a comment here. For me, it's been a process of falling away. The identification with personhood begins to fall away. It doesn't happen overnight or even weeks. It's been years for me, the falling away.
Yes.
Yeah, totally makes sense. And I think I want to share too what comes out the other side. I think, when you have your own awakening or your own, it doesn't even have to be an awakening. It can be just a shift in your way of living. It can be really alienating to everyone around you. And, everyone talks about like losing relationships and friendships and family and that kind of thing. And I just want to share, some positive stuff for me that's happened is, you become a way shower. So it can be challenging at first because you become a mirror to everyone around you. They see your changes and then they're triggered by your changes in your diet or your changes in your behavior or your changes in your jobs or whatever that is. And one of the things that I've experienced like over the last couple of years, I've been doing this work for, it'll be 20 years. It's really already 20 years. It'll be 20 years next year that I've been working with clients, but it's really been like 25 years since I started doing this work. But all of that to say, I did go through a period where it was very challenging with family and friends and all of those things, right? People come and go and reveal themselves and you reveal yourself and it's this whole thing. But one of the things I'm experiencing now is profound healing with my family. They're making changes and we're connecting on, they're allowing me to help them with their health and we're having different kinds of existential conversations. And so there is like a coming through it, with family, with friendships, unfortunately, friendships and relationships, I think they can come and go. With family, they're always there, right? It's like family. And I think I just want to share that for me, what's been positive is there has been challenges over the years, but there's a blossoming that's happening now. And that comes through that awakening power and in your friendships that have stayed, like the long-term sustainable relationships that we've cultivated, that we continue to have, really shift. And there can be people from the past that come back in because they are coming into a new understanding as well. So I think it's important to know when you go through your awakening and you're in that grief process, and part of the grief process is losing people, seeing who they are, understanding their patterns, understanding you can't engage with them because of their patterns. But there's also a coming through it, and people can heal and people can change. And I think all of us can. And as we accept and forgive ourselves, we find that people around us can accept and forgive themselves as well. And it takes you in a different place.
Yes, absolutely. And the thing that happens as well is through doing your own inner work and really aligning with the self, with the higher self, your state has a profound impact on your family, even if, as in my case, I live thousands of miles away. Tony and I would often say that when we went home, and this was years ago, we noticed there was a change in the family dynamic. There was a change in the way things were kind of unfolding for them. it's almost like this kind of alchemical process, and this energy starts to move out, and it affects everyone and everything. And we can't take any credit for that. It just kind of happens on its own and of its own accord. And I think anybody that's had an authentic awakening will say the same thing. There's an impact that starts to imprint itself in our, in our relationships at work, in our personal relationships, and in the family dynamic. But certainly initially it can be kind of rocky to kind of navigate, because of course what's happening is, everything that is conflicted inside yourself has to be resolved. And the more you do the inner work around resolving the conflict, the more that kind of plays out as harmonious kind of intentions and effects in the outside world. And it's really incredible. It's very kind of, it's hard for people to understand unless they've gone through it themselves. And I imagine that those people who are watching now or watching this episode later will say the same thing. We all have our own kind of testimonies with respect to the way that has played out at work, in relationships, and with the family.
Yeah. And I'd love for all of you to share. I see our little numbers ticking up here. It tells me how many people are watching. So please share anything that you want to share in here on the chat. We'd love to hear from you. And I think, in talking about this too, I think it's important to point to how important it is to be here in the world and having these life experiences after you've had an awakening, or you've gone through your dark night of the soul, or you have had an integration process. Because I think there's this real myth or, idea that once you're spiritual, you go to the cave and you sit and you meditate and you're no longer involved in the world. And I think that's a really dangerous notion. And I want to share a couple of things. One is an anecdote from the Dalai Lama, from my own personal, I was at his event and he was speaking. I was part of a private audience with the Tibetan people in Boulder, Colorado. And he was speaking to his own community of Tibetans. And he said, all these lamas can chant and sit in the Himalayas, but it doesn't do anything. Like, if you don't understand, if you're not getting education and you're not connected to science and the nature of the mind and all these things. And he was really passionate about it. He doesn't speak the same when he's not in a public talk. And you can see the passion and the intensity and the seriousness behind him of, like, you have to get an education and you have to understand how things work and you have to have a job and you have to be in the world. Like, he's very clear about that. And so I thought that was a potent moment. And the other thing I want to share is the archetype of the hermit in the tarot. The whole point, the hermit card isn't about leaving the world. The hermit card is, after you've left the world, you have to come back and teach what you learned in that experience. And so I think that's part of why these conversations, Julie, are so important, is because we're back out here. We take our breaks when we need to, and we do our integrations and we have our own journeys, but we also come back on here and have these conversations. And so I just want everyone to know, like, becoming conscious of the self isn't about, like, leaving the world behind. That's actually not the point. And I think a lot of people go to retreats and do all these things trying to, like, find themselves. And I think you find yourself here. It's not someplace, it's not a thing you go do someplace else. Yes,
absolutely. I mean, I've shared quite a few times, most people, I think, know some of my story, but, I've always worked. I would have the most incredible, profound, lucid dreams with initiations with His Holiness, the Dalai Lama, and great beings. And then I'd have to come out of it and get up and go to work and deal with classes all day in very challenging situations and circumstances. And that continues. I've never been able to, other than a short period of time when I went and, worked at an ashram, and I was working too. I've always worked. And really that is the pestle and mortar that grinds down the ego and really forces you to stay inside yourself and to do your inner work and to take ownership of what you're creating in your working life and in your relationships, looking at the things that trigger you, looking at the things that trip you up. Because let's face it, you can meditate for like 2 hours in the morning or something and, do your journaling, do your hatha yoga. And if you're not going out and working with people and facing with people on a day-to-day basis, it's kind of easy to stay in a sort of elevated space. But like if you're dealing with 4 kids and you're having to cook for them and run them around or, deal with, arguments or whatever, it's a different thing entirely. So it's really what you do, off your meditation cushion that makes a difference. And certainly for me, it's been through work. And I can give you just one, anecdote that really speaks to what we're kind of sharing now. Yesterday, I had a student who came to me in grade 12. It was the last day of school for the grade 12 students. And the tradition is they have everybody write on their shirts, messages of, love and congratulations and all of those things. And I had a student who came to me, just the most delightful student, and I don't teach her. I've seen her come in and out of the art room, and she's really delightful. I'm always happy to see her. We have a little conversation, but she came to me and she said, "Miss Julie, would you sign my shirt?" And I said, "I would be really honored." She said, "Because, I want to get," and she's joking, of course, "I want to get your signature because when you become famous with all the books you've written," I didn't even realize she knew that I'd written books. But anyway, she said, "When you become famous with all the books you've written, then, I can make some money off your signature." So, I was laughing. And she said, "More than that, when I come into your space," she said, "I just feel so peaceful." She said, "You give off this peace from your spirit that makes me feel really calm. And that's why I love coming to the art room." And I was just so touched. And because I signed a shirt and, she bounced off and off she went. And I realized, oh my gosh, out of the mouths of these young people, they feel our state. They feel our awakened state. And there's a resonance. And there's an opportunity for them to receive this awakened energy. And it's that does the work. We don't have to say anything. It speaks for itself. But she found a way of articulating back to me what she'd been receiving every time she came into my space. And this is what happens when we're sent out into the world to work. As Guru Mai said to me many years ago, she said, "I'm sending you away because I know you can take it." She also said, not everyone comes to a guru or an enlightened master. They come to know the guru through you. And she's speaking about the same thing. She's speaking about, for those who are looking and yearning and wanting to know the self, they feel that. They feel that awakened energy within them when they come into your space. And it's that triggers an awakening. It's that moves them into wanting to meditate or wanting to find out about, self-inquiry. And it's really remarkable the way that works. It really is. And it's nothing to do with the ego. The egoic mind can have no part in any of that.
Yeah, you're making me think of yesterday. I did all this stuff for my oldest stepdaughter's graduation party, and I was so exhausted. And when we got home, I got on the couch and put my feet up, and within 5 minutes, Ludwig, our dog, was sprawled out on my chest, and Cauldron, my kitty, was up by my head. And my husband even took a photo because he's like, "Man, they just climbed on their mom and went to sleep." And it is that energy, I think that my animals always reflect my energy. And they want that closeness. And like you're saying, that peaceful energy that we can provide when we're in that space, and that they can connect in with and heal with. And it is amazing. It's something I've been exploring is, I followed His Holiness for 7 years and 5 initiations. And now what? What do I do with that energy? Because like you said, he put out that energy so that we could take that energy and go out into the world. And it's part of what drives, the OHO events is I want to do my part. Like I feel accountable for the gifts that His Holiness gave me, just like you're talking about with Guru Mai, of like, how do I take what I've learned and process it and share it out into the world? And it is important for us to take that out. His Holiness said, sitting in the cave is one thing, but being in rush hour traffic is another thing. He talked about that at one of the events, and that's always stuck with me. And sometimes it's hard, with 4 kids, like it's hard to be in that space. And other times I can be in that space of the witness and be listening to my little girls talk about stuff and see what they're actually noticing, and what, they're very poignant. Kids are very conscious and they see a lot of things, and they can speak very directly about what they see and feel. And so it's being in that place. So it's not about leaving the place,
Right.
And I think that's part of what we were talking about that spawned this conversation is, sometimes I feel a little bit like, what am I really doing here? Because we don't even know what we're doing here. It's like the more you learn, the more conscious you become, the less we know about anything. It's like, I don't know anything. I'll communicate with somebody who's passed away, and I don't care how many times I've done that. I still am shocked at the things that I say out of my mouth myself. Like I don't expect anything. And I think sometimes you say things and it's like, gosh, like I just talked to a woman who lost her husband. They've been together 61 years.
Yeah.
Her best friend. And it's like, now what? And I hear people like stressed about saving money and doing these things. And, there's right action to all of that. And I get kind of lost in it. Like, what is the point of all that? What are you waiting for? What do you, I think you shared a post on Threads, somebody saying one day they'll do a summit. And it's like, what are you waiting for? Like, there's so many ways to do things now. It's so easy to write books. It's so easy because we have all this technology to support us. And I think, don't wait because you think you need to be a certain level of something. I just think that's the thing is like the levels come from our experiences.
Yes. Yeah, and it's several things as well. That can also relate to conditioning, family conditioning. If you have family members who say, who do you think you are writing a book? Nobody in our family's written a book, for example.
Yeah.
There was a woman also on Threads just the other day. My heart, honestly, it just broke for her because she just published a book, and she made a comment about her husband, and she said, "My husband told me I shouldn't tell family members because they'll all laugh at me, and I shouldn't, be too out there with the promotion because what if the book is bad?" And so she was just contracting herself down to fit what he had told her to do. And of course, these things, multiplied, across the globe are the way many families function. And the way, that kind of comment can just thwart you. Or, comments inside your own mind about what you can and can't do. And the fear around that, and the fear around being seen. Or it's not perfect enough, or what if I reveal what I know? What will people think? What will they say? All of these things are so easy to take on, and it's not like we're articulating them in many cases. They're just kind of rolling around in our minds, and when we buy into them and believe them, that's what stops us from taking the next step. But,
Mhm.
happily, coming back to, our theme, what happens is when identification with those thought patterns and those kind of beliefs and conditioning, when that falls away, then we're just much more fearless. And even if a thought does come up, an old kind of loop comes up, I don't know about you, well, I do know about you. I know you don't pay any attention to it. I just don't. I mean, I've said this before. I don't give a shit if I fall flat on my face and things don't pan out. I don't care. What I really care about is having the courage to stand behind what I'm being inner directed to do,
Mhm.
and just getting on and doing it, even if it's really difficult. Because you can, 10 years can go by, 15 or 20 years can go by, and you have a book or you have a project that you've always wanted to kind of create and get behind, and you just don't, for those reasons. So, yeah.
Well, and it's the integration. What I found is writing my books was the integration of what I went through. And I think that's, there's a lot of discussion about AI, and I think the most powerful thing you can do is write your own story.
Yes.
It is the most powerful thing you can do. And in writing my own story, like in writing Cherry Pie and writing about my experiences with the Dalai Lama, what did it force me to do? Well, it invited me to go back and watch those talks, because the public talks, not the initiations, but the public talks are available on his website and on YouTube. So I actually went back and watched the actual talks I sat at and remembered and took things in. And I went back through my journals. And so there's this interesting, it's like a research project of your own life. But what it does is it integrates it, because I'm an analyzing, intellectualizing guru. The integration is the part that comes later. Yeah. And so writing your own story is so powerful, and it just is everything. So first off, write your own story, because that isn't an AI story, right? That's your story, your own journey, and your own integration. And that is the journey of awakening. I just think it's so important to, I have so many people, like you're saying, I've always wanted to write my own book, or I think I should write about this. It's like, just do it. Just do it. And don't let the systems of the world hold you back from creating. And I find I doubt myself all the time, except when it comes to the prompts from spirit to create. I think that's where, if I could take that energy and start to integrate it into the things I doubt myself on, I think I'll see real shifts in a whole new way. Because when I get a prompt to create a conference or a book or something, I just do it. Like you said, who cares if it's wrong or right, or if you're perfect at it? It doesn't matter. And I've rewritten and republished some of my books. And, I've done that because, and I look back at the first edition of Enlightenment Pie and I'm like, oh my gosh, that was trash. But it was the right thing at the right time. And now, I'm in a new space. And so I just think it's important to the pattern of perfectionism. And that goes with spirituality too. Like I see it all the time. It's really strong in yoga. Because everybody wants to be perfect, and every single yoga teacher says, oh, don't compare yourself, but they do it.
Yes.
I love that Iyengar studios don't have mirrors. Like they don't have mirrors at Iyengar studios, because that's not the point of it. And so I just think, don't worry about being perfect, just do it and see what happens. None of us are perfect, but that's the point.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it's really easy to keep hiding behind the need for perfection to stop yourself from doing, whatever you're doing. And coming back to what you said about the importance of writing your story, I mean, that's really where I started with the whole thing, with the whole writing thing. I had a dream and I was asked, when are you writing the book? And I was like, what am I supposed to write about? And then this great being said, it's important to understand your own journey. So for anybody that feels stuck or feels like they need to kind of or want to start creating, just start by jotting down on line paper or wherever, or typing up your own story or the highlights of your own story, and just see where it takes you. And then just go from there. Just dive in and go from there, and don't worry about the outcome. Just have fun with it, play with it, and and see what happens, because that's really where the magic and the mystery and the alchemy is. It's stepping into that place of not knowing and just seeing what shows up.
Yeah. I want to bring up our soul purpose, because back in the day, you did true alignment readings and they were amazing and shared kind of our purpose. Well, not kind of, it shared our purpose. And a lot of people come to both of us asking about the soul purpose. And in Ayurveda and yoga, right, it's the Dharma, right? Your Dharma. What are you here to achieve? And, in business, it's your mission statement, right? And I want to talk about this a little bit, Julie, because I think it would help people, because it helped me to understand our purpose. And that it does change. It's not like you have one purpose in this whole life, maybe when you look back, but ultimately it can evolve. And I'm just bringing this up because I think that helps us be in the world. I think when you understand what you're here to do, you can do that in anything. So if my mission is to come into balance, to help others come into balance, I can apply that if I'm running a retail store. I can apply that if I'm health coaching. I can apply that with my kids. I can apply that in all areas of my life. And so I just want to bring this up and talk a little bit about it and get your thoughts on this too, because I think understanding a purpose, a mission, being mission driven, right? Like that is in every area of your life. It's not just like, oh, I have to go to India and do my mission.
Yes.
If I'm an advocate for nonviolence, that's in all aspects, including towards myself. And I think it's important to understand why we have these missions or purposes, and maybe even talk a little bit about how to get to that purpose through your own work of journaling and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really great question. So the thing that is really, really important to understand is that your mission or your purpose, if you want to, however you want to phrase it, is really twofold. Your biggest mission, the mission that you came to this earth for, is to discover who you are prior to the story, to have a transition away from identifying with your thoughts and beliefs and conditioning, and really recognize and live from the place of the true self, the true I. That's your number one purpose. And out of that comes your secondary purpose, which is how you show up, how you express, how you function and make a living in the world. And your secondary purpose really isn't as important as the first, because I always say, once you awaken to the truth of the self and you live from that space, you can be working in McDonald's. And this isn't I'm not putting McDonald's down or, Starbucks or anything. But, there is this kind of hierarchical belief in the world that, you're kind of lower, you're a lower status if you've got like a job like, serving cappuccinos or whatever. But, it really doesn't matter what you're doing in the world once you've woken to the truth of who you are. But of course, what happens is once you do wake to the truth of who you are, then it becomes much clearer for you to access and define what your calling is, where your gifts are, what they look like, and how you can access those gifts and express those gifts in the world in order to uplift people. So, I always knew, even prior to having a radical shift of an awakening, that I wanted to be a teacher. That was my thing. I knew that I had to be a teacher. But of course, what's happened is, especially post-awakening, the way I teach has changed dramatically. And what I recently realized is really my secondary purpose is to create a space for adults and for teens and for young children to trust and honor and recognize and live true to their intuitive knowing. So what I'm doing all the time is I'm encouraging people, honor the self, honor your intuition, honor what feels right for you, let go of what doesn't feel right for you. That's behind everything I say, everything I write about, everything I speak about, is encouraging people to honor their intuitive knowing and their deepest wisdom. And of course, the way that kind of plays out in the world is, I'm in a high school teaching art and design, but even though I'm teaching art and design, I'm still creating space for students to look into and connect into what feels right for them in terms of their sort of creative output and expression. So what I would say, if there's any viewer who's listening now, they've had a shift of consciousness, or even if they haven't, if you're still struggling with what your purpose looks like in terms of your work in the world, make a list of the things that you feel are your gifts or your skills or your talents. What do they look like? And then how can you utilize them and share them in the world as a way of kind of uplifting other people or serving your higher self, or however you want to put it. That's a really good place to start. And if you can at least embrace what your gifts, skills, and talents are, you're already halfway there. And, sadly, on that same point, it was absolutely astonishing to me that when Anthony and I were at an ashram in upstate New York, and we were getting ready to leave, we were going through this sort of transition program and everything. And part of it was to write your gifts, skills, and talents down, and then kind of, rewrite your curriculum vitae, your resume. And it was really shocking how many people who, although they'd been at the ashram, they'd had an awakening, they could not articulate their gifts, skills, and talents. They had great difficulty. And that gave me such insight in terms of, again, psychological conditioning, psychological resistance, conflict within that hadn't been addressed and looked at. Because of course, if we can't articulate our gifts, skills, and talents, there's something within us that's telling us we're not worthy.
Mm-hmm.
So again, these are great, fantastic pointers that show us really where we're at. Because you can meditate all day long, but if you can't actually articulate what your own gifts and skills are, and you've got no clue what they look like, there's a disconnect somewhere.
Yeah. Well, and I'll share, I've been so inspired by my oldest stepdaughter graduating high school. And what's been inspiring is the conversations I've had with my parents and my husband about our own journeys in high school and what we did. And I have my little keepsake box. I'm telling you, this is a great practice that I just have done over the years, which is I pull out my keepsake box and I look at my high school photos and my certificates and posters and cheerleading stuff, whatever it is. I really encourage all of you to think back, whether you can look back with physical things like keepsakes, or you're just thinking back, who were you when you were young and what were you drawn to? Because that is the Shakti.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, I go back, I get goosebumps everywhere when I say that too. So that is important to say. When I look back, it's like, oh my God, like I studied opera all through high school. I was in church choir at St. Mary's. I was, singing at state competitions, all these things. I played the piano, I played the flute, I played the piccolo, I was acting, I was directing junior high plays, I was doing all these things. And it's so inspiring to look back at who we were, like what were we drawn to? My husband started playing drums, like very early on, he played drums. My mom was sewing her own clothes. She made all her own clothes in high school. So I think looking back at who you were because I think graduation is interesting because there's hundreds of parents at a graduation ceremony thinking about when they graduated and who they were. And it's prompted all of these interesting discussions because that is who we were. It's who we are.
Yes.
And I think bringing those forward, I'm really inspired to bring forward all of the things I loved as a kid. And you know, it's funny, Julie, I'm sure this is no shock. We had the first, one of the first desktops, right? The old computers that came out in the 80s. And I used Print Shop and I loved making banners and business cards and all these things. And my dad and I were talking about this because he's like, oh my God, you made flyers and postcards and all this stuff. I love digital design. I love it. I love making assets. I love making film. And so how do I bring that forward with my YouTube channel, with the work that I'm doing, my website, like all of those things? And so I think what a great process for everyone to think about who you were. What did you do in high school? What did you love? And can you pick it back up?
Yes.
Can you order the ballet shoes off Amazon for $20 and take a free ballet class on YouTube? You know, what do you love to do? And bring that back to life, because I think that energy will bring forward your mission and your purpose and what you're here to do. And it also will shift your energy so dramatically.
Yeah, I mean, and also it helps you to see that there's a link that goes way, 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 way back that was there. It's kind of its own accord that was speaking to you. And obviously if it still has energy, then it means something. And I can, when I was like 17, 18, and even before then, I was writing these, long kind of essays and stories with illustrations of otherworldly escapades and visitations and things like that. I wasn't showing anybody, but I was doing it. I felt drawn into sort of introspection and contemplation practices. I'd go on these great long walks on my own, just looking at nature and listening to the trees and just really enjoying that quiet time. And I was also, very much kind of involved with my 4 brothers and my sister, and just, would love playing. And we'd play using the Ouija board. We'd play with levitation. So I was really deeply looking for a connection to source, to the mystery, to the metaphysical ways of expressing, even as a kid, and there was no indicator or indication of those things in my family. It was in me. So obviously I came into the world with all of those things, and there was a need to express from that place. And of course, it's no surprise that I'm still writing and wanting to share, and I'm still teaching and wanting to speak about the deeper truths of what it means to be human and to be expressing in this world in a meaningful way.
Yeah. I have some self-inquiry just around this idea of an ego death. And I know we're getting close to time, but there's so much more we could still talk about. And so a few questions for everyone out there to work on. First one, what part of me has died and what is being born in its place? Another question is, if I am not who I thought I was, who or what am I now? What version of my life was I unconsciously preparing to end? And what happens now that I'm still here? Am I resisting life because I've seen beyond it? Or can I meet life now with reverence for both the finite and the infinite?
Wow. I love the last question. That's really great. Can you read that one again?
I love it too. I was like, am I resisting life because I've seen beyond it? Or can I meet life now with reverence for both the finite and the infinite?
Wow. Yeah, I mean, that last question's really incredible because as you and I know, and I'm sure many viewers know, there are a lot of people who have either near-death experiences or transformative spiritual experiences that just do not want to be here and kind of live life in a very depressed way. So that's a great question to ask.
Yeah, well, and I've been in and out of it. I mean, I think, when you see past it, and again, going back to my work as a medium, I think I've been in that question a lot recently of just, there's this whole world beyond this life. And there's always been a drive for me since I was little, just like you were talking about, Julie, to see, feel, experience that world beyond this one. And I think in the 80s and 90s in metaphysical communities, that was the focus. Everyone was focusing on out-of-body experiences. Oh, did you have an OBE? Did you have an NDE? Did you have, right? There's this whole thing about getting out of our bodies. And so what's changed for me in my own awakening journey is that I'm no longer, it's not like I don't have interest in that, but I'm more interested in mastering being in the body, mastering my finances and being in the world, mastering my physical self, mastering parenting. Like, I'm more interested in being here because there's a shift of like, it's not about being out there. It's about understanding that when I get out there, I'm going to look back in here. I think that's it. That's it. Like, when you leave this world, you're stuck on what happened in the world. And you go through that incarnation cycle, bringing all that back in.
Yes.
So how do we really be present here now in this moment so that when we are out, we can look back? I want to look at my life review and be like, wow, I remember that. And that was cool. And boy, that was hard. Like, I don't want to be in my life review wanting to talk to all of these people that I left behind and telling them I'm sorry. It's just a lot.
Yes. I'm the same. For me, it's all about embodiment and being in the world and really feeling everything and facing everything and not shying away and not trying to bypass or kind of be outside my body in some alternate reality and not having to kind of deal with the muck and the grime and the grit of, everyday living. And being authentic and honest about it. For me, that's really where it's at. Otherwise, what's the point?
And wow, we've got a lot of, there's Denise, hello. And Danny Marie, welcome in. Yes, embracing the gift of life and being fully in it. And that's where the purpose comes too, I think, is like, looking at what inside of us wants to be expressed now that we know that we're not just the body, like it's devotion, the devotional practices of how do we devote ourselves to the energy, the Shakti, the awakening energy that wants to be expressed through us. And we can't, this is where the health and healing work comes in. For all of you who wonder why I'm doing all this Ayurveda and everything, is that's the point, is it's difficult to express our creative spiritual energy if our body is in pain and inflamed and struggling, or even overweight. Like even right now, I have this deep desire to like shake off everything. That's where Kundalini comes from. You see all these people shaking. Well, that's all maybe performative. The whole point of it is to clear out all this baggage we've been carrying so that we can truly be the vital force that we're meant to be, to live out our purpose and our devotion.
Yes, absolutely. I'm with you 100%. And I think what happens is what you're detailing is really mature spirituality. In the beginning, you know, after a shift of consciousness, I think there is a drive and a desire to have kind of heady experiences, out-of-body experiences, lucid dreams or whatever, and to explore the psychic phenomenon. And it's kind of like the candy. You know? Master yogis talk about the supernatural powers and these siddhis, these events, you know, as being like, you know, candy that is given to a child to get the child to do what you want it to do. So, but you know, you can't keep consuming that kind of candy and hope to really attain the highest. The highest is discovered through being in your body, being where you are, meeting and greeting everything that shows up, and really approaching your kind of your spiritual understanding and awareness and development from really integrating it into the human experience and honoring the human experience. And that is really important because, you know, we all know what spiritual bypassing looks like, and it really doesn't take you anywhere. I think you can do it for a while, but at a certain point, it becomes obvious that there's no real depth to it. There's nothing there. So really being embodied, really being here, and looking at ways to express your gifts authentically, it is the way to be. And it's really the doorway, I think, into recognizing the higher truth of who you are and living from that place, and not giving it away.
Yeah. And it's like they say, you know, before enlightenment, sweep the floor, and after enlightenment, sweep the floor. And I think, you know, it's just so profound. I mean, in every little awakening we've had, I think you and I share that the first thing we do is go clean the crap out of our house.
Yes.
Right? It's like, I gotta
Yes.
clean out my closet. I gotta clean this out. I gotta get rid of all this, you know, it's like this, because that energy is what brings all the Shakti to life, you know, even cleaning out your email box.
Yes.
And I think we have to go on a retreat, and retreats are nice, but it's the walk with your dog. It's, for me, it's driving home from school and listening to my little girls and their shtick in the back seat and asking them about their day. Like that, those moments for me, like to see like what's in their mind, like what's happening, like that puts me in a different space. You know, those are the things that put us in the different space. And I think it's really powerful to stop and think, like, how do I care for my body now that I know I'm not the body?
Yes.
What keeps me rooted on the earth and makes me want to stay now that I know I'm not of the earth?
Yes.
Now, those are the questions we want to ask ourselves. And it is existential, and it can be overwhelming sometimes. And depression can be overwhelming, you know, grief and sadness of like what we've lost. Once you can see the patterns, I think that's where it starts to be like, whoa, like I see how my grandmother is like my middle stepdaughter. I can see how my mom is like, you know, this person. I see. So it's like you start to see all these patterns, and you see them in people, especially if you work as coaches. I know so many of you that watch this show are practitioners and coaches yourselves. You see all these patterns, and it gets very overwhelming. But I think it's knowing that we can identify the patterns, because once you identify them, you can come out of them.
Yes. Yes. They don't have the same hold anymore once you see them.
Right.
It's really the beginning of the end. And that it changes everything.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I know we've gone over, but this is just so powerful a conversation. And all of you who are watching, thank you, and continue to share. I found a prayer from Paramahansa Yogananda's teacher, Sri Yukteswar Giri, which I'm probably not saying his name exactly right, but that is him. And he was one of the first teachers that appeared to me, of all things, in a meditation, even before the Dalai Lama was Sri Yukteswar Giri. And I don't really understand a lot about him. There's, you know, much like all the other profound teachers, there's not that much information about them, really.
No.
There's a photo, a darshan of them. But anyway, I found this prayer that I thought was really good for today. So before we close with this prayer, don't forget to register for OHO, One Heart, One Earth, Awakening the Sacred Body. Just go to my website, buddhistbiohacker.com/or/OHO. All of the links are posted everywhere, and you'll see lots of promotion on this. And Julie, what do you have going on? Anything you want to share with everyone today?
Yes, I've been really I had to make a list because I've been busy with so many things. So, my big news, which is fun, is I've been working on the audio version of my books. I think I mentioned that last time, and I'm done with those. And it's been really great listening to them, quite honestly, because you kind of forget, right, what was written through you, and how much Shakti is in those. So so those are available. If anybody's interested, you can find me on Amazon, and check out those books. Let me see. Excuse me. I'm leading up to the OHO Summit, which I'm really looking forward to. I'm going to be holding a series of small group events, really looking at reigniting your creative fire, because I'm currently working on my 7th book, which is all about, reigniting, bringing fire back into your life, particularly with, expressing yourself authentically. So I'll be posting information about that soon on my website. But if anybody's interested in, more details, just send me a message. You can find me at truealignment@yahoo.com. I'm also, of course, on YouTube, Julie Hoyle Official. On Instagram as well. What else do I need to say? I think that's it for now. Actually, I'll leave it there. Oh, and I'm always available for one-on-one sessions if you would like to. My website is posted right here, juliehoyle.org.
Thank you. Well, I love having you here, and I know there's more to come from both of us, which is very exciting. And all of the information is below for both Julie and myself. So please connect in. Please subscribe to Buddhist Biohacker and also to Talking Truth Julie Hoyle. And just a reminder, Buddhist Biohacker is on 12 different audio platforms at this point. So, and you can find me on iTunes podcasts. You can find me at iHeartRadio and all of the things. So if you're driving in your car and you want to catch one of this is episode 281, I think. So we're nearing 300 episodes of Buddhist Biohacker, and there's so much beautiful content. It's fun. When I'm in my car, sometimes I go back a few years and just pick something and listen to it. And it's just like, wow, like inspiring stuff. So tune into that. And I'm going to leave us with this prayer that was connected to this idea of, living on the planet after an awakening. And this is by, again, Sri Yukteswar Giri. O Spirit eternal, shine through the veils of illusion. Let the false I fall away, and in its place, reveal the pure light of the self. You are ever existing, ever conscious, ever new bliss that animates this body, this breath, this earth. Guide me to live not in the shadow of fear, but in the radiance of wisdom. May I not flee the world, but realize thee in it, in the rising sun, in the quiet heart, in the humble task. As I awaken beyond form, teach me how to serve within it, to live as a soul clothed in kindness, to act with clarity, to rest in truth. O divine friend, let me not forget. Life continues, but now with thee, Om, peace. Amen. I love that they're singing behind me.
Yes, me too.
It's kind of ideal.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. And thank you, Raquel, for that. And share in the comments and share in the replay comments too. We love it. And I will be back on tomorrow with Tim Sanders from Omnia Balance. He has gracefully offered to sponsor the OHO event. So he is going to be on tomorrow, and we'll check in with what's going on with Tesla technology. And thank you again, Julie. I love you. Bye, everyone.
Bye.